And so we're going to focus on building voice and video, building voice and video specifically an Android app today, but in general, talking about voice and video. So KC here, my very esteemed colleague here, he is our, tell me if I get your title right, the product manager for voice and video.
That's right.
Awesome. So he's going to walk through, I don't want to steal your thunder. You'll walk through some cool stuff and showcase one of our features in our dashboard. I think is very cool, which is the Call Studio feature. Okay, so Casey, you are based in South Korea. Where are you originally from? Are you? Yes.
Yeah, so I am from the U.S. I am a U.S. citizen. I've been in Korea for about 5.5 years now, working with Sendbird, and prior to that, I was with Samsung for some time. And yeah, kind of a citizen of the world, if you will.
Nice. Yeah, you speak you speak Korean, English, and there was another language, right? Was it French?
I speak French as well. I lived in France as a child.
Oh, that's super awesome. I can barely do English, so I'm very, very jealous. Okay, so before you get into your demo there, Casey, I want to ask what you or what anyone might be drinking. Oh, my cup is disappearing. So today for our cafe, I am drinking the cup doesn't show anything. I'm drinking some tea to stay warm because where I'm at in sunny San Diego is a little cold tonight. So yeah, Casey, what are you drinking?
I am a purist when it comes to my beverages, and I have a bottle of water here in a recyclable and reusable aluminum bottle.
Ah, is it tap water, sparkling water?
It's tap water filtered through Brita.
You fine stuff. Excellent. Cool. Okay. All right, Casey, I'll let you take it away here. And I would like, if anybody does have any questions for Casey, feel free to post up in the chat or in the questions, or I think there's a raise hand feature so that we could bring you on. You can ask your question as well too. Okay, Casey, take it away.
Okay. Can I take over the screen sharing?
Oh, yes, you may.
All right. So what I'd like to do today is I would like things to be as interactive as possible. Now, I understand you may not want to show your face or certainly not your screen, and that's fine. I do hope that to some extent you can follow along. I'm going to be starting more or less from scratch. I'm going to be assuming that you have a little knowledge of how to put together an Android app in Android Studio. But I'm not even going to assume that you have a Sendbird account, and I'm going to walk through the process of setting that up because we know that for a lot of even hobby projects and things like that, oftentimes the biggest barrier to entry and blocker in getting started is not having the right environment set up, and not even being able to be at a point where you can start doing any development or any hacking on your project. So we're going to kind of walk through everything that you need to do to get started with Sendbird, with an account, and with a sample app. And our objective, our success criteria here, is to be able to to be able to make a call on a new application in Sendbird using an app that you compiled from source. All right, seems ambitious, but we have a lot of things that make things a lot easier. So let's get started. So if you can see my screen, everybody can see my screen. I've got just Sendbird.com open right here in a browser, and I've got Android Studio right here. Now I'm going to kind of leave Android Studio off to the side for now. We will be using that in a little bit, but first we need to get set up with an account. Okay. So I'm just gonna hit the sign up button right here on Sendbird.com. Now, if you already have a Sendbird account, you can skip this step. If you don't have an account, then I do encourage you to follow along and to get set up at the same time, because I'm going to be doing this in real time. Okay, so I'm going to start off just with a burner account. If you're doing this for a hobby project or for your company, I do recommend that you do this properly. So I'm just going to call this Code Cafe. even though I'm in Korea, I'm going to say that I am in the United States. And we're gonna Sendbird.com and we'll make a password. Okay, so I agreed to all this and now I create my account. So what's happening here is it's creating an organization, and the organization can have multiple applications within it. So the organization here, I'm just going to call this Sendbird Code Cafe Crew. That is us right here today, and I'm going to hit next. Okay, so I just started from absolute nothing, and now I've got an organization account here on Sendbird. The first thing that it's asking me is to create an application. Now, of course, Sendbird's, from the get-go has been a chat API, but we're looking at the calls function right now. So we're going to pick a chat plus calls, and we'll call this Code Cafe app. In fact, let's call it demo app. Okay, there's a few regions that we can select here. The region that you choose generally doesn't matter. There is some impact to latency depending on where your users are going to be, but they all function more or less in the same way. So I'm gonna pick one close to me here. Okay. So now I have created my application, and the application is being generated on the region, and then I will be able to jump in and start using it. Okay, so a couple things just happened right now. The application was created and I was just granted 20 free credits that are good for 30 days. This is kind of the free trial program. 20 credits is the equivalent to about $20. And with that, you can start making calls and start using the Sendbird call network and infrastructure and platform without any upfront payment or commitment. Okay. All right, so I want to pause right here. Let's just recap what I did here. Created an organization, created an app, and was granted some free trial credits. So if anybody is following along with me and still needs more time, I do ask that just on Zoom you can do the raise hand feature. If you would, just raise your hand if you need more time. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next step. Okay, I don't see any hands, so we'll move on. Okay, so if you've used Sendbird in any other capacity with chat, you may be familiar with some of the menus items here. I'm going to assume little to no knowledge, so I just want to walk through a few things right here. When an app is created, it is given an application ID, and that is this right here. This is how this account will be identified in a code base, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Anyway, you'll need to remember this. Actually, you don't need to remember it because you can access it anywhere at any time. You can copy it right here from the dashboard. It also appears right here in the URL. So just make note of that. Underneath the overview there, we have a user section. It's blank right now, but this won't be blank for now for long, because we're going to be setting up some test users that we're going to be able to make some calls with. Okay, I'm going to skip settings for now. I'm also going to skip the chat functions. I'm going to go here to the bottom just to look at call logs. Right now, it's completely empty. We have not made any calls on this account. It's completely fresh. So what I'm going to show now is how to set up some test users. And we've really tried to make it easy for anybody to come into the dashboard and to start making calls, even in a test capacity. Maybe you're just trying to demo, you want to see, what's the latency like, what's the visual quality like, or you've started developing in your app and you have party A on the app you're developing and you need a party B on the other side to make a call. We basically need to get all these things set up, and it can be a huge pain in many instances, but in our case, we've tried to streamline the process of how to get from initial setup to making your first call. So the first thing it's asking is to download the mobile app on my mobile device. Now, if I click this, this takes me to Google Play. You can also just go to Google Play on your phone and search. Just do a Google search for, a Google Play search for Sendbird Calls, and this app will come up, and you can download it directly on your phone. So I've done that, and I have the app installed on my phone. Okay, so I just want to make sure it's downloaded right now. I don't need to do anything else on the app in addition to that. So again, if you're following along, please do download the app on your phone, and we'll take the next step. Okay, there's a concept called the phone booth. The phone booth lives inside this dashboard, and it's linked to the user and the account that I've just created. In this case, we have codecafe@sendbird.com. I'm going to create a user ID here. I'm going to call this operator. I could call it, whatever I wanted, but this is kind of the home base user that is going to be attached right here to this dashboard account. Okay. Now the operator needs to call someone, and like I mentioned, the operator is going to be attached to this dashboard. The contact that I'm going to call is going to be logged in on this phone. You can see the icon on the right here. Now we're trying to set up who do we log into as on the phone. And I'm just going to keep this simple. We're just going to call this user A. So user ID, nickname. The nickname you can change whenever you want. The user ID is fixed, so it can be completely hidden to your user experience, where the nickname is what shows up on labels and whatnot, and that can be changed. Okay, so I hit next, and user A has now been generated. The next thing it's asking me to do is to sign in as user A. So if I look on my phone on the app that I got, the first thing that it says is sign in with a QR code, and there's a button there. It's going to ask to access my camera, and if I hit sign in here, it will show me a QR code that I can log in, that I can just point, and now I am logged in on my phone as user A. Okay, so that took out a lot of the frustration of, well, how do I create a user and then log in as the user? The QR code just does it all for you. So now this user that I just created is logged in. I am logged in my phone as user A. Okay, so I'm all set. So, in a production environment, each user in your Sendbird application is going to represent an actual human being. For development and demo purposes, we just create these virtual users, and then we just kind of pretend as a developer or as a demo that we are multiple people on multiple devices. So, for example, here is the operator, which is me. And you'll see there's a little phone booth right here that just showed up, from which I can make a call. So if I want to call user A, which is my phone, I can just hit this voice call right here. It's going to ask permissions to my microphone, and I just got an incoming call notification. Accept. Hello. All right, you probably heard some echo. I am now in a call between the operator and user A. All right, let me mute that so that we don't get continued feedback. But you can see what's happening here. The two users that I just created, operator and user A, are now talking to each other. One of them from a browser, the other one from a mobile device. Let's quickly jump to call logs, and we can see in current calls, this call is ongoing between operator and user A. I can see the details of this. I can see how long it's going for. Each call gets a call ID in the system, and we're basically up and running at this point. We've now made a call. So there are a few other things that I want to point out. Let's go back to our user view. If you see here, we've got user A and operator, which were just created. And so the call studio was the process, or took us through the process of creating these users, which now operate and function as as users that I could also have created right here. And you can also create via the SDK or via the API. So let me do a quick temperature check here before I move on. So just the concept of creating users and connecting them in the dashboard and in a mobile device. Raise your hand on Zoom if you need me to review anything more, or if we're okay to move on. All right, let me switch the other way. If we are okay to move on, give me the thumbs up icon on Zoom. There we go. Seeing a little life out there. Very good. All right. So before we get into the code base, there's one more thing I wanna bring up. So as you saw when we created user A, we were able to log in as user A on the mobile device. If I hit sign in here, I actually have two options here. I can sign in on mobile, which does the same thing. It will give me the QR code. There's also the option just to sign in on web. What this does instead of a QR code is it just gives me a link, and this link can be opened in a new window. Let me do that, and I will paste it in. It's a pretty long URL because it specifies how it ought to how the app should respond to it. And you can see here that just by clicking on that link, I all of a sudden just got logged in as user A. So if I call from the phone booth, which is not user A, this is the operator, remember, and I hit voice call here, now the incoming call comes here, and it also comes on my mobile device. So I'm logged in as two devices, and whoever answers it first gets to actually speak in the call. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It can get confusing if you have a whole bunch of devices logged in as the same user. So it is just as easy to create a new user. Let me do that, and this can be the one that I sign in on the web. So I will copy that, open a new window here. And now this is like the web quick start. This is not linked to the dashboard account at all. Whereas the phone booth you can only use if you're logged into the Sendbird dashboard, and it's very tightly coupled with that. Anyone with this link can basically log in as this user B if you share that link. And now as user B, I can say, well, I want to call user A, which you will remember is the user that I'm logged into on my phone. And here it is. Okay, so now I've got a call between user A and user B. The operator is not involved here at all. This is just a call that is going on between two regular users, whereas the operator kind of has an admin perspective. The user B, which was in web, and the user A, which was on mobile, they just made a call and it worked just fine. Okay, so that's great. We've got the phone booth, we've got the mobile, we've got the web quick start. Let's start talking about doing our own development now. What I want, ultimately, we want to put this into our own applications. So account setup is nice and everything. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty of how we put the pieces together. So you'll see right here, there's the quick guide, which kind of goes through what I just explained here, how to connect your mobile, I'm sorry, the phone booth to web, or do an app-to-app call. The next thing we got to do here is actually get into the code. So there are links to GitHub, and we've decided that we're going to focus on Android right now. This takes us to GitHub, where we have the Quick Start app. Now the code base is almost identical to the app that you'll find on the Play Store. And if you read the README here, you can see that in order to get started, you first need to create an application, which we did. We need to create some test users, which we did. And now the next thing it's asking us to do is to specify the application ID. Now this requires the code base. And this is when we're going to get into Android Studio. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and I'm going to just hit get from version control. I'm not even going to bother with downloading a zip file and loading it in or using it. I'm just going to use the internal tool here just to clone this repository locally. Okay, so this code base just came from GitHub and now is here inside of an Android Studio project. Now, if you are following along, I do want to make sure that you have enough time for this because this is where the errors can start piling up. As soon as you start trying to actually set up an IDE and a development environment, that's when things can start to become a challenge. And you know, things like the background tasks start running and whatnot. We can encounter some unexpected items. While this is loading, I do just want to identify a few things. Let's see. Yeah, bear with us here if we have some issues as well. I guess this is almost to be expected. But there's one thing that I want to point out here is to check out your SDK manager because there are some dependencies that need to be in place in order for this code base to compile properly. And that is at least make sure that these two items are checked: the API level 29 and API level 30. If they are missing, you'll start to get some red lines under your code, and it will not be working as intended. Okay, so we will let this do its thing. Again, we're starting from absolute scratch here, so you know the first run through, there's often you know, some preliminaries that need to go in place. So if you are following along, hopefully this is happening in Android Studio for you. And now referring back to our quick start, the first step here is going to be integrating our own app ID into it. Okay, so it looks like the code base has downloaded here and we are good to go. You want to look under app, Java, and then look at the main package, and then inside of BaseApplication is where you will find this file right here. And this is what's being referred to here. The class is called BaseApplication. And let me open this import real quick. What I was mentioning before, if you don't have these dependencies in place, you will very likely start getting some red lines under here saying that these it can't resolve these dependencies. So if you do encounter that, again, just make sure that you have the right API levels in place. Okay, so the next thing we got to do here is find in the code base your application ID. And as you can guess, what we have to do is paste our application ID that we just created into here. Now, what this will do, once this application ID is hard coded into our app, our code base here is basically hard linked into this account that we just created. So these users that we created, this user A, user B, and operator, the app will now, via the SDK, will know about them. If we, you know, open this user, log in as user A, call user B, the SDK is going to know what you're talking about because we've initialized it on this with this app ID. So I'm not going to do a deep dive into the code base here, but long story short, it's taking the application ID, it's sending it into an initializer, and kind of fires up all the network connections that are required. And then, as you would imagine, the calling, there's two sides to it. There's receiving a call, which requires listeners to be in place, and then there's making a call, which is done via a dialing function. So we're going to see that in action in just a little bit, but without editing anything else. So the only thing I've changed in the code base is I've just put in the app ID here. I'm going to fire up an emulator. I'm going to do this from scratch. I've already wiped the data on this Pixel emulator. I'm just going to run it again. First time it runs takes a little bit of time, so I'm going to get a head start on this, and we can watch these processes running. Okay, so it's going to build, and when the emulator opens, it will more or less show the same thing that I saw on my mobile application. And then from there, I can actually make and receive calls from. Here we go. Emulator just popped up. Nice. Okay, here we go. Again, it'll still take a little time before the app shows up, but we are well on our way now. Now, what I want to do here, I'm going to go back to the call studio. I'm going to create a third contact. So we're going to have a total of 4 users on this application. Just for consistency, I'll call this user C. Oh, other way. What's my convention? User C is the ID. User C is the nickname. Okay. I will eventually be logging in on the emulator as user C. And then once the emulator is logged in as user C, as you can maybe guess, I'll be able to call it as user A from my phone, as user B from the web browser, or as the operator right here from the phone booth. So let's give this just a little time to fire up. Again, if you are following along, which I hope you are, hopefully this is going okay for you. Emulators can be a little finicky sometimes, especially when running them for the first time. But my objective here is to be able to get you through the major hurdles in getting to the point where you can actually make a call on an application that was built from source. So let's give that just a second. While we're waiting, let me open this user B up in its own window. I think I closed that. Now, for any of you that are following along and that have created some users on your own application, which is different than this one, right? The one I'm using here starts with 2ED. If you created your own, your application ID is completely different. However, if you do what I just did there and did sign in on web, you would get a unique ID. Unique URL. And if you were to share that with me in the Zoom chat, I could actually log in as that user on your app, completely independent from anything I'm doing here, and then I could make a call on your app. So if any of you are brave enough and have followed along so far, if you want to share with me one of these sign in on web links, I could actually try calling you. You don't have to answer, or you can just remain quiet on the other end of the line. But we can see that we can establish a connection. Even though I don't know anything else about your app other than the URL that you would have given me, we can still actually start and have a call in that capacity. So let's see, how's our emulator doing? Chugging along.
Still building. Casey, I got some questions for you, I guess, while we're waiting here.
Yeah.
So I noticed in the studio, you had demonstrated the phone the phone option. But I saw there's the button for the video. So the video works equally well from the studio.
It does. Now let's see. Let's see. I can. Yeah, as you see, I can make a voice call and a video call. The video call will be asking for camera permissions, so I can allow that, and I can choose. Let's see. I just have a virtual camera set up right here. I think it might conflict with Zoom if I do it. But let me from the operator, I can call user A over video. Oops, I actually gotta pick the right one here. There we go. Okay, now I've got an incoming video call here, and there I am. As you can see, I am actually behind a green screen. I don't live with the purple background.
broke the magic.
Yeah, but yeah. So video call, it's really just a matter of pressing the other button. And of course, there's more considerations. Takes up a little more bandwidth, and there's resolution and video related considerations that you then have to take into account. And when you're building an app, you have to, that alters the UI quite a bit because you need a place for that to happen. But okay, well, it looks like our emulator has now fired up from complete scratch. You witnessed me downloading this, cloning the repository from scratch and changing it. So the first thing I'm going to do here is sign in with ID. Now, depending on how things are configured, you can have it skip this step if you kind of front load the login step with the information that you've got. But as you know, I hard coded this app ID here, which now shows up right here, and you'll see it's the same one that I put in. Now, what the next thing it's going to ask me to do is to put in a user ID, and we did set up user C to be able to do this. I'm going to leave access token blank, but let me just say a word about what this is and just have a quick sidebar about security. For demo and for testing and for development purposes, access tokens are pretty much not needed. But what that does enable is that anybody that knows your application ID, which is not that much of a secret, right? That it's not something that you publish, but it's not like a secret token that has to be kept secure. And the user ID, which, depending on how your application is configured, that could be a hash, it could be an actual, it could be an email address, it could be a semantic name like I have here. That's pretty much up to you. But anybody that knows your application ID and the user ID in this situation could basically log in as that user. Even if not from your app, they could do it from a web browser or whatever else. So if you go to settings here, there's a section on security. By default, we're assuming that we're kind of beginning at a development and a demo situation, in which case for calls, you can both make a call and answer a call without any access token permission. If I were to deny login without an access token, what it would mean is that you would have to use the Sendbird access token API to issue a user-specific access token and then pass that to the user, so that in order to log in, they would need that extra layer of security, that even if somebody knew the application ID and the user ID, they would need an access token, which can only be issued with proper credentials set up here on the dashboard and then processed through the API in order to do it. So, in this state, it is quite insecure, but again, fine for demo and dev purposes. But when you are going to production, we do recommend that you up the security and then build in the access token integration as well. But again, we're trying to lower the barriers of entry here just to be able to make our first call in a demo environment. Okay, so I'm going to log in as user C on this application ID. Here we go. Okay, so it's going to be asking for permissions. I'm going to grant it pictures and video and audio. Again, it needs this for microphone and for camera permissions. And your app if you build this into it too, those will be permissions that have to be granted by the user as well. And there's really no way around that because we actually do use the microphone and the camera. Okay, so our next step here is going to be make a call. I'm going to make a call from the emulator here, and I'm just going to call the operator. Okay, so I'm going to let's try the video call here. All right, here we go. Making the operator with my virtual camera. I'm going to answer it here, and my virtual camera here is off. But now we're actually in a video call. In between, let's check our call logs here. In between operator and user user A. Did I hang on? Oh, I'm sorry. That was ended calls. If I go to here to current calls, user C. Yeah, right. This is the one that we had logged in as the emulator, and this one is ongoing. And you can see it's a video call. Okay, so I'm going to stop all of that. Let me try the other way around, where the operator is now going to call user C. Now, this one's sometimes tricky. The emulator sometimes gets this and sometimes doesn't, because what it's going to try to do, the way that the calls are received on the emulator is via a push notification. And depending on emulator configurations, it's hit or miss. So I'm going to do this with the caveat that that the push notification might not work on the emulator, but I do assure you that it works very well on when it's actually compiled onto proper hardware. So let me call user C here, making a call. All right, we did it. It's a Christmas miracle. All right, I'm gonna hit accept here, and we are now. Uh-oh, did I miss it? I was too slow on the trigger there. There we go. Okay, incoming call notification came. We accepted it. And now we are inside of call. This one, again, we should be able to see this one here in the current calls between user C and the operator. Okay, so since that worked, let me up the game a little bit. Let me get on my phone, which you will remember is user A, and I'm going to call user C. You can't see what's on my phone screen right now, but it looks very similar to what you see on the emulator there. Okay, and now user A is calling. I'm going to accept that. All right, now this is a call between user A and user C. So the operator is not involved. Then you also remember that we have user B set up here. I'm going to make a call to user B from the emulator, and here it shows up in the browser. So you know, we bridge all platforms here, whether it's emulated Android, whether it is native Android, whether it is you know, inside the dashboard or outside the dashboard, and of course this works with iOS as well. You pretty much all set to make calls among any user that we have here in the system, logged in through, again, to review our 4 points of entry were the phone booth, which is linked to your dashboard account, the mobile app, which you get on the Play Store and log into via a QR code, the web quick start, which you get a link to here on the Call Studio, sign in on web, and then finally the emulator, or a test device if you actually put it onto your hardware. So I think we've achieved our success criteria here. We made a call. We received calls on all of these 4 different avenues to make calls. If you have been following along, you should be in a really good spot now, because your calls are working, and you can now dive into the code base and say, okay, here's how I set up my listeners. Here's how I set up my dialing function. You'll see that what's imported here, you know, the com.sendbird.calls, this is the SDK, which is, you know, packaged into this sample, and you can see how it's implemented using this open source sample, and you can repurpose this and, you know, copy and paste the code as you need into your own application, or just look at it from an educational standpoint and say, okay, this is how, you know, after the call is accepted, this is how we initialize the audio, the video, and whatnot. You do have to do a little digging into the code base, but it's all here for you to use. And most importantly, using, the process that I just described to you, you now have it connected to your own account, and you can start making calls amongst your test users. So I will leave it here for now, and we can move on to Q&A or a deep dive on in other areas.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Casey. We do got a question from Gung Ho. He asks, can call users only be created in the dashboard? What if a user logs in the mobile app for the first time with a new ID?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you into the app with a new ID, it should it should create it. The SDK does have that capability. Now I'm gonna do something dangerous here. I'm gonna try to do that right now. I'm gonna log in as user D. We ready? Okay, sign in. Hey, guess
Looks
what?
promising.
I am user D. Let's check our users right here. There's user D. So yeah, the answer is yes. The SDK, if you log in as an unknown user, it will basically generate that user. It gets more complicated if you have the access token thing enabled as a requirement, because that has to be generated. You can see that that the nickname was not generated, so it shows up blank here. But once user D has been created, I am able to add it here on the back end. So I've got user D here. Now I haven't added it to my call studio, but I could. I'm instead of creating a new user, I'm adding a registered user. So the nickname here, we got user D, and there it is. And now if I want to call user D that I just created, there it is. Yeah,
Nice.
so hope that answers your question. That we actually hadn't tested that in prior, but yeah, that actually works just fine.
Nice. Grant asks, do the users in a call have to be specified at the start of a call? Is it possible to create a clubhouse style rooms where users can drop in and out of audio or video calls?
So the short answer is the users need to be specified prior to a call. There's no such thing as just kind of this long running call that that people can come in and out of as of right now. There is if you want to kind of deliver that user experience, there are a number of ways to do that. One of them is actually to integrate with chat, because a place where people can come in and out is more or less what a chat channel does. And then once users are identified in a chat channel, you can specify who you want to talk to, and then initiate a call like that. So as of right now, we've just demonstrated one-on-one calling, which is what the platform supports at this point. That group calling is something that we are getting into. There are some conceptual differences with that. For example, a group does have like a room concept where you can step in and out of. That's on our roadmap it's in development right now, and we plan to release it in the first quarter of next year. There will be some, again, the concepts are going to be a little bit different to do that. But as of right now, where it stands, one-on-one calling is what it's limited to, and in order to do that, the users do need to be specified up front.
Excellent. I've got a question about the QR code that
Yeah.
I think is a fantastic feature. So is there an API or some way for a developer to get QR codes to kind of employ in their own apps?
At this point, no. Let's see, in an actual production setting, the QR code should be unnecessary, because your app should already have a user concept, in your primary apps database.
Right.
And so, what these users in Sendbird are really just mapped to existing users. In the demo setting that we just showed you, there is no equivalent to that of, hey, I'm Uber or whatever, and you already have your driver and your rider IDs. Those then need to map to Sendbird IDs in order to be able to make the call. In the absence of that in a demo setting, that's where the QR code kind of comes into place. like the QR code can be, it's generated here on the dashboard. It's you can, you know, copy it and send it in an email to someone if you want them to be able to log into the Quick Start app, and mainly for if they want to test the sound quality or the latency or things like that. That is one easy way to do it. But largely we don't anticipate a use case in which the QR code would actually factor into the user experience of a production app that's integrating Sendbird.
Cool. I got one more question if no one else does. This one may be a little tricky. So say two people are in a conversation that's ongoing, and one of the users wants to transfer the person they're talking to some other person, you know, kind of like a customer service sort of bounce. Is that possible with the libraries?
So it is possible on the implementation side. On the technical side, those calls, a transferred call would actually look like two separate calls. What you could do is create a UI such that one call begins and ends, but instead of saying, you know, showing call ended, you could program into your own app to, when this call ends and transfer is true, you know, start playing some hold music. Meanwhile, it's trying to find the other user that it needs to connect to it. And then, you know, if the user receives a call from this user, automatically accept it. So you could kind of create a seamless call process, but it would require a little bit of logic around the experience.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Casey. Okay, so if anyone else has any additional questions, feel free to put that in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to start closing us up here since we're near the end of the hour. So some of you noticed that we kind of ran a poll earlier while Casey was talking. Some of these mostly just for fun, but to kind of get a gauge of everyone that's here. So not surprising, the number one drink that people drink while working was coffee. The interesting one was the others. So I can kind of guess what the others might be, but if anyone who voted for others wants to put exactly what the other category is in the chat, that would be enlightening to know. Okay, let's see. Oh, actually, yeah. Okay, so you told me water. Oh, I should have put water as another. Okay. How often do you make voice or video calls? Okay, so we can see here that everyone does at least one call a day. So, you know, that can be a little insightful in terms of if you're building your own application, whether or not you want to add voice or video. You can see here just from the people here that, you know, we're predominantly at least once a day, if not many, many times a day. And I probably should have put in a caveat, you know, to exclude webinars and Zoom calls and stuff. But, you know, I think personally, we all make a lot of video calls in general. So, so hopefully everything that Casey went through can be applied to your own applications. And let's see, the last thing we asked about was what platforms most folks were on. And, you know, this looks like web, slightly edged out. So that makes me really glad, Casey, that you went over the dashboard and talked a little bit about that implementation versus, you know, just focusing on Android. But cool. Okay. All right. So we put some links into. Oh, so people mentioned water, and I drink mate. What is mate?
I think
is that mate. A mate? Like a? I have no idea what mate is. Is that like a? Okay, I'll probably just look that up. I might get myself in trouble trying to figure out what that is. Okay, yeah, so we're closing up here. Let's see. Casey, do you know if there's any upcoming exciting calls, updates that folks should know about?
Well, I did mention that group calling is in the works. That's going to be our next major feature release. Again, that's going to be a game changer for some use cases. And we will have more details forthcoming on that in the new year.
Excellent. Cool. Okay, so I'll close this off with just mentioning that we have a community page. I guess I should put this in the messages here. So if you have any, you know, technical questions or questions in general that that you might have that's not addressed in a blog or some other resource, definitely check out community.sendbird.com. It's an open forum where you can ask pretty much anything you want. And right at the top is an announcements page. So anytime we have a new release or doing a new event, they'll be right up there at the top. Cool. Okay, so I want to thank everyone again for showing up today. Thank you, Casey, very much for your time. It was very much appreciated. Okay, so if there's no other questions, then I guess we'll let all of you continue with your morning or your evening.